Okie dokie. So postnatal depression, mood swings, mood change is something that affects literally every single woman who decides to have a baby. And hopefully by the end of this, it'll make sense as to why. And if and when you choose to have a baby, you can kind of understand what you're going through. If you've already had one, hopefully this will kind of help you be a bit easier on yourself and support people that are around you that are perhaps going through it for the first time or are having another baby, etc. So I've gone through and just double checked a few things, so it's in that way I'm giving you information that's up to date as much as what I have access to allows, and then it will make sense as well. I've also got a few books and stuff here that I'll show you at the end that you can look into if you want to know a bit more about your health and ways to help you with things around pre and postnatal sessions and also just women's health in general. So before we actually get into the postnatal stuff, we need to understand our menstrual cycle a little bit better. So what's important to know is that through the menstrual cycle, each part is a development of new hormones, or the hormones your body creates, but in different levels. So the first part of it, which is the follicle stimulation, which is where the follicles that produces the eggs grow in the ovaries. Then you have ovulation, which is where the follicle ruptures and the egg is released. And then obviously you've got your luteinizing phase. I'm trying to remember the hormones to remember the process. The luteinizing phase, which is where progesterone is produced from what's called the corpus luteum in your ovary, which is a gland, which I kind of remember it as like the scab of what the egg is released from. And now the reason this is important is because our body only produces progesterone after you've ovulated. This is, hopefully I haven't lost anyone yet. So the point being, progesterone can only come after ovulation. Now here's the kicker. If you're super stressed or you're not eating enough or there's a lot of different things that can affect it, if you don't ovulate, your body doesn't actually surge progesterone. So your body doesn't actually officially make progesterone. So the reason this is important to understand is because if your period is already all over the place, or if you've been on contraception for a while and then you've come off try and fall pregnant and your hormones haven't developed the way they need to, this all impacts how your body will respond after pregnancy. But it'll all link together in a minute, I promise. Anyway, so hopefully that graph makes so there's so much to cover. I want to quickly touch on these two hormones and what they're responsible for. So they're both responsible for a lot, but I'm just going to kind of simplify it a little bit for the purpose of this video because we're not focused solely on them. So estrogen, it starts to rise after you've had your menstrual bleed, and its role is to kind of stop the bleeding, which is why it'll phase out a bit slowly, or for some people it might be sudden, and it re-thickens the endometrium. So then that way, if and when you do fall pregnant, the fertilized egg is able to stick to the endometrium, it then gets absorbed, the things happen, and then you have a baby. Progesterone, after you ovulate, what that's responsible for, it's your calming hormone. It keeps you calm and zen, so then if you do fall pregnant, it kind of helps with keeping the baby. It actually does do that, because then what happens is that progesterone, it's also responsible for the thinning of the uterine, of the lining, and it helps with the lightening of the flow of your period. But if you do fall pregnant, the juicy bit, if you do fall pregnant, your progesterone levels need to maintain a high, like a peak state, a high enough state to make sure that they don't drop, so that you don't have so that your lining doesn't shred, and so that you don't have a period and you can then go forth with that pregnancy. So this is why progesterone's key, right? So when you fall pregnant, the corpus luteum, the little scab thing that's in our uterus that I was explaining, it's not a scab thing, it's a gland. The gland that's in your uterus has to continue to produce progesterone for about the first 3 months by itself to maintain that pregnancy. So if you are someone who has low progesterone or progesterone, like estrogen excess, this is where the high risk of miscarriage comes. But this is also why the first 3 months are crucial and why they're the danger zone. All right, so from about month 4, end of month 3, start of month 4, is when the placenta starts or is fully formed. And this is where progesterone now is, like the high amount of progesterone comes from the placenta. So from start to finish, each trimester, your progesterone keeps on surging and it gets higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. Now, I found I'll post a picture, but I found a little explanation that shows you the difference in progesterone. But what I need you to know, the important thing, is by the end of the 3rd trimester, your progesterone is about 11 times higher than what it would be than what it would be without pregnancy. All right? So in that last trimester, it is the highest it's ever going to be in your life. Now, when you deliver a baby, whether it's normal or a C-section, a vaginal or a C-section. So once you've delivered your baby, you also have to deliver the placenta. The placenta also comes out after the baby has been given birth to. Sometimes straight away, sometimes it takes a while, sometimes the uterus is still contracting in order to get it out because it comes out after the baby. But what happens when the placenta comes out is that all of those hormones have to realign and fix themselves once the baby's gone. So you've just gone from having your progesterone be 11 times higher to the placenta that was generating those levels be taken out of you, and now your body has to fall back to pre-baby hormones. So guys, prenatal depression and prenatal mood swings are part of that because your body is trying to figure out what to do next. Then, after you've had your baby, your progesterone doesn't actually surge again until after you've had your first period. Because remember, your body can't do progesterone. But here's the kicker. After pregnancy, you usually have about 4 to 6 weeks of post-pregnancy bleeding, which is the uterus shredding, more things coming out, the uterus trying to recover. And then if you choose to breastfeed, the oxytocin and the hormones that allow you to do that usually prevent your body from having a period for a while. And then if this is your first baby, you might not be sleeping as often. If it's your second baby and perhaps you have a toddler, you've got a lot more to focus on. And so stress levels after, also because your progesterone is a lot lower, is usually quite prevalent. It's a part of the process. It's beautiful. I don't want to scare anyone away from having babies if this is what you want, but I think this is important for you to understand. So it could potentially be 5 to 6 months before you get, okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but a while before you get your first period, depending on how long you breastfeed, which means it's a while before your progesterone actually has the opportunity to surge again. Now, I actually want to correct myself and say that it's not your first period. It's actually the first time you ovulate that your body will produce progesterone again. Because the period itself is when progesterone drops. That said, though, there's also anovulatory cycles, which is where you still bleed, but you haven't actually ovulated, which means, again, you wouldn't have produced progesterone. So if you're producing estrogen and not progesterone to balance it out, that can also enhance your feelings of stress and anxiety, not because estrogen itself does that, but the excess of estrogen impacts the way other things happen. So this impacts postnatal mood and postnatal depression and how all of that works. So I hope that kind of gave you some answers and some peace of mind to understand that you're not going crazy after giving birth. It's a genuine hormonal factor and you need to be nurtured. And so I hope you all got a lot of value out of this and it was worth your time. And yeah, look after yourself, nurture yourself, be kind to yourself. And remember, when you have a baby, your only responsibility is your recovery and just staying alive and keeping your baby alive as well. And be as happy as possible. And when you're struggling, reach out, but reach out to the people that matter. Like reach out to your parents, reach out to your partner, reach out to sisters, like people that can help you. If you're scared of judgment or you're scared of what other people will say, don't reach out to them. Reach out to the people you trust. Also, I'm well aware, if you picked it up, that I do bounce between estrogen and estrogen, and that's because I do have a bit of an American following. So you'll also notice that I use the American spelling for estrogen, just so then that way everyone knows what I'm talking about. And I wanted to show you a couple of books that can be super helpful. I'll take a picture because I have a feeling I'm not going to have enough time. But Rushing Women's Syndrome, Period Repair Manual, especially after pregnancy, How the Pill Changed. So I was just watching back the videos and realized that I said that your corpus luteum is in your uterus, which is incorrect. The corpus luteum and the follicles and stuff is actually in your ovaries. So it's supposed to say ovaries, not uterus. Ovary, ovary, ovary.